Hey everybody, welcome to Counseling Moments with Pastor Kevin, the podcast that helps us connect the significant moments of our lives to Scripture. Hey, welcome to another episode of Counseling Moments, and I'm here today with interviewing a life group. And the life group I have, I've got the life group that Mike and Emily are coordinating, and then we have a member of their group, Daniel, who's with us, and we just want to talk a little bit about what life group is like. Again, our aim for the interview is to encourage others to join a life group, and then to hear a little bit more about their experiences as coordinator, host, members of the group. And so we're going to ask some questions about that. You guys just want to say hi to let people know that you're here?
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hey, everyone.
And thank you. And then we're gonna just launch right into the questions and talk a little bit about what it's like to be part of this particular life group, to encourage you, those who are listening, to think about either hosting a life group, contemplating and asking the Lord what it would mean to be a coordinator of a life group, or even just taking the time to commit yourself to a life group and being part of a life group and having that ministry of presence. So the first question I have for you all is, what have you found beneficial about being part of a life group?
For me, I would say getting a chance to develop friendships at a deeper level with some folks at the church who maybe I just would have spoken to sort of at a surface level on Sunday after the service, like, hey, how's it going? Oh, you had a tough week. Okay, see you next week. You know, now we're getting together every other week. We're in a way that we're intentionally looking for support. How can we pray for each other? Talking about things that we're struggling with, things that are going well. And then, you know, on Sundays when we see these friends and we say, hey, how's it going? There's like more behind that question now. Like, I know what we prayed for you about last time at Life Group. You know, how's that thing going? And we can go deeper into those things. We don't have to just stay on the surface. Yeah. So as you're forming deeper relationships, Mike, in the life group, it allows you to have deeper conversations whenever you encounter these folks. Right.
Yeah. Anyone else want to comment?
I think for me, one thing I've been thinking about is I think it's easy for me personally, like when I'm going through something hard, I'm not necessarily quick to just like text friends about it or something, but it is easy to find influences that are not so good at giving me advice, you know, social media, things like that. And so I think being intentional about putting yourself out there with, you know, these other like-minded believers on a regular basis has just been encouraging for me to, get that biblical advice on the things you're going through and give that to others too, and just be intentional about where you're kind of getting your encouragement from and your advice from.
Yeah, because when you mention social media, Emily, we don't really know those people at all. We see the side of them that they want to present on whatever web page or format or platform they're using, but most of those people do not share our worldview. They don't share our faith in Jesus, and they may even understand Jesus differently. And as we're learning on Sunday mornings, as Pastor Caleb takes us through Galatians, we understand that there are false gospels and that people might not even believe the same gospel. And so if we immerse ourselves in that world to get counsel and advice, we have no way of measuring from the source, because we don't know the source, what's the quality of that counsel. But in the church, in our church, we know that we're dealing with like-minded people, especially as we deal with the essentials of the gospel.
Yeah, for myself, for my family, you know, being relatively new to the church, we found joining the life group just to be a wonderful experience in getting to know people in the church, being able to put names to the faces where we can, you know, not just, as you said, Mike, have a passing hello, goodbye conversation, but you understand, you know, what's going on in people's lives and how you can be, you know, thinking about them, praying about them, and being mindful in that regard. And as you said, Emily, that we understand, you know, as we gather that it's not just a voice or someone who you don't know, but that you understand these people are rooted in the truth of the word, and that as you study that word together, that you have a common goal in understanding that.
So relationships are important to you. That's what I'm hearing. And of course, fellowship and relationships are the main import of the life group experience, right? And so I just want to move on and ask the next question that's related to this one. How have the various elements of the group been helpful to you? And for those who are listening, our life groups have 4 core elements, things that all the life groups are doing. And then there are things that life groups might do, add, or create that are different based on the giftings and the inclinations of that particular group's members. So the 4 core elements are fellowship, which are casual, informal conversations that you can have as you're just hanging out together. You might have a particular person you want to talk to on a given night, and you're having that conversation. Then we have something I call stories, which is a formal time where we're really kind of answering 2 questions. Where do I see and celebrate God working in my life? And where do I struggle to see God at work in my life? And through answering those questions, we get a deeper, more personal picture of what life is like for you. And then out of those conversations, both informal and formal, we move into prayer. And we pray for one another, and we pray for each other's hearts as we go deeper. And then we also have this time when we're talking about the Bible text that's going to be preached on in the coming Sunday. So it's a preview. We don't have a sermon to review per se, though. You may spend a few minutes talking about the previous sermon, but you're reading the text, asking questions, observing the text. You can just come Sunday morning with this anticipation and readiness to hear what God has to say to us through the preacher. And so I just want to ask that question of the various elements of your group, and what do you add and what do you create that's different? But what's been helpful for you, especially in the group?
Maybe I'll just start by sort of describing our format and like maybe some things that are unique about it. So we meet at 5:30 to 7:30, and we do dinner together. And during dinner is when we'll do that first fellowship phase where we're just sort of catching up on whatever, you sort of sit with whoever you sit with and just chat about whatever you want to talk about. And then after dinner, we'll do a song together where we gather up all the kids. We say song time, and the kids run over to this one couch. We sing a song and then dismiss the kids from there. And then the adults will stay and move into the more intentional story time, like you said, Kevin. And then we go straight from story time to the prayer time where we pray for the things that we've just been talking about. And then with the leftover time, we talk about the upcoming sermon text, but definitely the focus is on like the dinner with the fellowship and then the story time and prayer. And we actually just save like relatively small amount of time, often just 15 minutes for the sermon discussion for the following week.
And which of those elements are most helpful for you personally?
Mm-hmm. Well, all of them are. I really like the format. I think it's a very natural flow, especially with sort of the way we've incorporated dinner into it. I like all the elements. Like for the fellowship time, it's great to be able to sit down, sometimes beside other people's kids and just even talk to the kids about whatever's going on with them. And then definitely the story time. I appreciate that, how we can slowly start to move towards more serious things rather than just sort of staying with the surface level stuff. It's like a good formal way for us to say, okay, so how did your week go? How can we be praying for each other?
Yeah, I've really appreciated the story time too. Like, I think it's easy when you do get-togethers especially with little kids. Like, it's hard to get to that like deeper level. You're sometimes chasing kids, especially after church or whatever. So having the intentional formal time to sit down and share what's going on, I've found really beneficial. And I think the prayer too, like Mike, we were talking about this earlier today, but just praying for things for people like over time has been really cool too. Like, it's one thing to, you get a prayer request from someone on a Sunday and then you do pray for them that week, but it's not always such a longer ongoing thing. So I think that's been really,
Mm-hmm.
really cool to see too.
And for you, Daniel, what have you found to be helpful?
Yeah, I would say for our son, he loves the fellowship time, made a ton of new friends in the life group, and he just really treasures that time. He looks forward to it. He sometimes asks us every day if the next day was life group. So yeah, he really enjoys it. For my wife and I, we have really appreciated the story time element. Where you have an opportunity to be vulnerable, to give praise for those good times, and to discuss and request prayer for those challenges that come across in life. And yeah, I just find it really encouraging, really uplifting, and it's a real blessing. Yeah.
Yeah, and you guys have mentioned a few things here, like dinner time and singing a song together and lots of little kids and just those. Can you talk a little bit more about what makes we've talked about the 4 core elements that all groups have in common. Can you talk a little bit about what makes your group unique?
Mm-hmm. Our group happens to be all families with young kids at this point. Probably the oldest kid is like 7 years old. So we're all sort of in the same phase of life, which is nice. When we get to story time, we talk about, how did your week go? Like, a lot of us are in the same phase, and we have like the same sort of things to talk about, like, oh, it was a hard week with the kids, or things like that. So there's something really special about having this like understanding already going into it with the different members of the group.
Yeah, I think the timing has been really just like helpful for a lot of us. Like, the later time can be tricky with like trying to find babysitters or things like that. So I think this earlier time has been nice. It's been a bit of like the first week we did it, I think the last 15 minutes, like all the kids were screaming and we're trying to pray, and we
lost control.
It was a bit crazy, but then after the next few weeks, we sort of, I think, got into a better stride, kind of switched up the timing. Like Mike said, we kind of do the sermon text at the end, and it kind of seems to work better and stuff. But yeah, like, so it's kind of like figuring out a way that we can all do it, because I think for some of us, like Mike and I were thinking, I don't know if we can do life group right now. It seems too hard. And then finding a way to kind of make it work in our season.
Yeah, because you guys came to me with that idea for doing a format of life group, meeting earlier, incorporating dinner on a regular basis. Like, it's not just an occasional thing, but every 2 weeks when you get together, dinner's involved, so that no one has to do a prep outside of life group. And I just love the creativity that says, I don't know if we can be part of a life group, but if a life group looked like this, we could do that. And then you just created that, and then people have flocked to it. Like, it's
And I have to give credit to the Sunday, because we did do the Sunday after church life group, and that was really good too. We had lunch.
Our previous
and
life
so that
group.
so we tried that first, but then we did find, like, for kids, being at church for the whole morning, and then a few hours after it was too much for them. But yeah, so that's kind of where I first got the idea of doing some sort of meal situation. But then this timing worked out even just a bit better for us. So
yeah, and Danielle, you've mentioned how much your son enjoys it and he's made friends. And how did this format just move you to join this life group? Because that's something, as a member of a group, you haven't talked about. We can see how the origins of the group and how Mike and Emily became coordinators. But how did you discover this group? How did you join this group? Because there's many different ways in to a life group, and just what was yours and what made this group appealing for you to join?
Yeah, definitely the timing was a major factor there. We had been a member of they called it a small group at our previous church, and it would start at the typical, at least as I understand to be typical time of like 7 p.m. And it's challenging in that young kids' bedtime might be 7, 8 o'clock at night, so you're talking about a stretched out day for them, which is it's challenging. So being able to meet at dinner time, where as we found there are many young kids, it just worked really well in the sense that we didn't have to be worried about our son needing to do something else, and that we could focus on that time. And as a result, he could also focus on that time and, forge friendships in that situation.
Yeah, and for people listening, this is a particular iteration of a life group where it's families with young children. Many of our life groups are intergenerational, and we love to see that too. And how do we discover these groups? And I think there's a number of ways. When you come to our church, and you're going to find, I think, up front that people are going to be friendly, and they're going to greet you, and they're going to notice you, and they're going to have a conversation with you. But actually getting to know people and plugging in can be hard. And as much as we don't want to put the onus of that on the newcomer, who oftentimes that becomes the case, it should be those of us who are familiar with the church, who are already well grounded and have relationships reaching out. But that's not always the case. But if you come to our church and you meet somebody, you can always ask, how do I plug in here? What's your small group ministry like? And hear a little bit about it. Or you can come talk to a pastor and say, how do I get more involved in a life group here? Or maybe you've met somebody and you're talking to them, you can say, are you part of a life group? And sometimes if you make that personal connection, you can then just find yourself joining that group, and there's already somebody you have a connection with. Or you can just very simply, if this is your style, we have a listing of the available life groups online. You just go to our website, hespelerbaptist.ca, and you go to the life group tab, and you can navigate to see what are the available life groups. And you can just reach out through the platform to the various coordinators and just communicate with them and find yourself into a life group. So those are just some of the ways you can get connected, and then find what you'll see what's the same about life groups, and you'll see what's unique, and then you can find one that's a good fit for you. So as we're talking about that, as people listening might be wondering about joining a life group or even hosting a life group. Oh, there's nothing really out there for me, but maybe I could just create one. What have you found it's been like in your experience of being a coordinator for a life group? And you both coordinate and host, which we don't necessarily require. It just serves some coordinators better to host. For other coordinators, it serves them best if somebody else hosts, and vice versa.
Yeah. So for coordinating, like I remember when we talked about this format to you, Kevin, we said we'd like to host a group like this, but we don't want to coordinate it. We don't want to lead it. We probably said we don't want to lead it because we had in our mind, like, there's a lot of homework involved in leading it. We sort of have to be qualified to like answer questions, hard questions that will come up from the text and stuff. And talking it over with you, Kevin, it became very clear, like, this is very sort of like no homework beforehand. Like me and Emily will not be responsible for answering these like hard sermon text questions. Like, we've got the pastor who's like spending all this time on the sermon, like our role is just to really collect the questions and sort of guide the discussion. Like, okay, it's time to switch over to story time. Okay, let's start the prayer now, so we have time at the end for the sermon discussion. So really, I don't feel qualified to lead like a Bible study, but coordinating a life group like this is like totally approachable for me. And it's something like I'm growing in. Like, I wasn't the best at keeping us on schedule at the start. And even Emily, sometimes I'll be in the middle of a conversation. She'll come tap me on the shoulder and say, we should switch to story time. And, it's like, oh yeah, I totally lost track of time. But it's been a great experience coordinating, honestly.
Yeah, I think I'm glad we kind of decided to go for it because, like, in this current season, we have the capacity. And like you said, it didn't turn out to be as much, I guess, kind of like prep ahead of time that we thought it might be. And so it's been totally manageable. And I think the hosting has been really fun too. And like a side benefit I've found for the hosting is sort of like getting, exercising our like hospitality muscles, and sort of like, I think before we started this life group, we have been sort of out of practice with hosting and things like that. So this has been sort of a side benefit for us, is just getting back in the habit of it. And we've appreciated that. It seems easier now to have people over because we're kind of in the habit of it. We have 13 kids and like 10 adults over, so we can have like a family, right? And so that's been a really nice benefit too.
I really appreciate that. That's an interesting benefit I hadn't thought of, which you get into the practice of hospitality. And Daniel, as a member of a group, what's it like for you to interact in this format and kind of because it's no homework for the members either, is it? And
No, I mean, we're talking about texts that are for the following weekend sermon. So yeah, it's Mike used the word approachable. I think that's a great way to describe it. In that it's bring yourself, bring a heart that's ready to listen, to share, and to be involved. And yeah, it's a very low requirement thing to take on, I would say.
and that low requirement, it doesn't mean you're not investing something. You're just investing differently, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
and-
I don't think that there's, like, as you said, preparation. It's really just that you are ready and willing to be involved, to try to bless others and to receive as well in that community environment.
Yeah, I like the way you put that, Daniel, because we're not just investing in church, showing up on a Sunday morning or showing up at a life group for what we're going to be fed. We're not consumers. There's a mutuality to it. We are coming to a church, becoming a member of a church, and investing in that church because we are all needy and we are all given gifts to help meet one another's needs. And so there's a mutuality. I'm coming to be ministered to, but I'm also coming to minister. And that our presence makes a difference to the people who are there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I appreciate the way you put that. And then also, as you consider life group and being a member of a life group, and you talk about how it's low, it's low preparation. How have you found that to be life-giving for your family?
I've really appreciated the intentionality of it. I appreciate how, our son can be involved in the worship time, and it's something that's outside of church where we are, not just listening to worship music, but we are singing out loud, that we are singing as a community where it's, the children, the adults, everyone together can worship God. And that we can take that home with us, where when we go to do our prayer time that evening or whatever it might be, that there is a desire there that I see growing, a curiosity growing in our son and in ourselves as well. That it's not just a Sunday thing; it's every day of life, every moment of life.
That is well said. Just one last thing on this, if you'd like to say anything more about what would you say to someone who's listening, who thinks that coordinating or hosting just might not be a good fit, or might be just a little bit too much?
Mm-hmm. I would say, be like me, have a conversation with Kevin, and he will convince you that it's not that hard to coordinate a group. Maybe you have some ideas of what it would take to lead a Bible study, but it's not that. It's definitely approachable. And it's like, I feel like it's a good step for us to take in terms of growing in this sort of coordinating capacity. Like, it's something I don't have a lot of experience with. So it's like a cool opportunity for us to stretch those muscles a little bit too, similar to the hosting muscles Emily was talking about before.
Yeah, and I think take a bit of time to be creative and think if there is a way you can make it work, because I think the benefits are so big to being in a life group. So if in this season, you think you can't do it all, well, just maybe you could kind of help coordinate a group at church, or maybe you could, there's maybe different ways you can be creative to still make it work. Yeah,
one other thing I might add is the way Emily and I handle the coordinating aspect is she handles most of the communications during the week. We have a WhatsApp group where we talk about, if someone's sick, we talk about who can cover their food for that week, because we sort of split up the food preparation work. Where was I going with this?
You kind of take more of the
that's right.
The night coordinating role to kind of keep us going. So we kind of split it up that way. Plus our group, takes on different responsibilities too. So even if you decide to coordinate a group, of course your group is going to also want to take part in different aspects of it too.
Yeah, it's not us carrying the whole load of the group. It's definitely the whole group is we're like a group together, like it just happens to be at our house. And I happen to be the one who says, oh, it's 6:30, time to do the song.
Yeah, and that's something I want to encourage our coordinators with, is that's why we call them coordinators, is that it's your responsibility to see that things get done. It's not your responsibility to do everything. And is there a particular role that your family plays? Is there particular responsibilities then that you carry as a member, Daniel?
Yeah, I mean, we'll assist with things like bringing different elements for the food, and as Emily's done a great job in arranging a calendar where we can see who's responsible for what, so we can have that sorted out. We show up with our different elements, and everyone is well fed, I would say.
Yeah, so we've talked a lot about the mechanics of the group, but I think the important takeaway for that is just to see how the group, the body, serves one another in these various capacities, and how we really try and keep it to be not a burden, but a life-giving opportunity to come together and fellowship and get to know one another. Again, that is the key goal and feature, is for people to connect and to have biblical, godly fellowship where we are talking about Jesus with one another and incorporating the truth of God's word into our lives as we're having personal conversations about the mundane moments of life. One final question I have for you all is, what is some of the fruit you've seen as God is working in your life group?
Maybe I'll just say a little more about the kids' involvement in the life group, which is like a brand new thing for us.
13 children.
13 children. Yeah. When everyone's healthy.
7 and under.
Yeah. When everyone's healthy, there's often like less than 10, sicknesses go around. But it's very cool having the kids be as involved as they are. Like for the first hour that we meet, the kids are there for the whole thing. We're eating together. We even do the song together. And then we dismiss the kids and they just play together. But we've even done things like had the kids draw pictures for a missionary family together, like when the grown-ups are doing the discussion time. And like Dan was saying earlier about the kids looking forward to life group, like we had a lot of shy kids on the first meeting, a lot of shy kids who like, they don't really want to play with each other. And now it's just after only one term, I think we've met together, right? Boom, they're just like best friends. They run around together at church after the service. And it's cool to see, like, they look forward to it. They're involved. Like we heard, we do family Sundays at church where the children will be in the service for the whole time, and they're noisy and stuff. But Pastor Sergey has said, this is their church too. They're not just hidden away and they join the church when they're older. Like having those family Sundays is a reminder, like it's their church, they're growing up in it. And to have them involved in the life group like this is like a cool way to be like, hey, you kids it's your life group too. It's not just the parents are gone doing our strange Bible study thing that's boring. Like it's cool for you too.
Yeah, totally. Like I think, to be honest, when we kind of had the idea, I was mostly thinking about like the adult conversation and all that. And I wasn't even, thinking so much about how amazing it was going to be to see our kids getting such close friendships and getting to see how a life group works and see us pray for each other and stuff like that. So that's been really cool. And then I think another one, I don't know how much we've touched on this yet, but is the sermon text. I think for me, that's been a cool fruit to see for myself, is realizing that, I'm getting more out of the sermons because I've been reflecting on the passage ahead of time. So that's been another one that's been a fruit for me.
That's great. Mm-hmm. Daniel, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I would say one of the greatest elements of fruit that we've seen is in our son, as you said, Mike, very shy at the start, but really coming out of his shell, where he, and started out establishing those relationships horizontally. But I think as time has gone on and he's involved in the worship, and, when they often barge in during the text time as well, that relationship growth has not just been horizontal, but also begun vertically, in that he's asking questions about, God's love and forgiveness and sin, and that there are real conversations that come as a result of that, which is wonderful.
That's a bit of an unexpected fruit, and I think we really see God working when we intend one thing and we see God doing more than we could ask or imagine in these things. So I really want to thank you for your time. And one last thing I want to say is you mentioned, Mike, in this, that you had met in this session, and that we're also trying to keep the commitment to life group such that it's also not a burden, and to help people find a good fit for a life group. So we do 2 sessions a year. We avoid stat holidays. We avoid summer times when I think people would find it difficult to commit to a group, so that when you do commit to a group, you're committing for a season. We run October into mid-December, and then we run early January into May, wrapping up before the stat holiday. And part of that is so that when you're committing to something, you can actually commit to it, and it's not a nebulous or unending commitment. And that also allows you to see if a group is a really good fit. And so you can also opt out of the group you're in after the session ends and join a different group and see if that's a better fit. But the goal is always to find a group that you stick to. Find a group, and it sounds like that's what you've done in your group. You've found a good thing. And so if you're interested in a life group and maybe there's not one out there for you, it doesn't meet on your particular day of the week, the format doesn't fit, consider coordinating or hosting a group and come talk to me, and we can discuss the details of that and what it would take to get a group started, and that way you can be served. Is there any final thoughts before we wrap?
Nope.
No.
That's it. We've said everything that there is to say. Well, I want to thank you very much for joining us and for allowing me to talk to you about these things. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.